Good evening, and welcome to the USS Boston Shipmates Reunion, celebrating the 40th anniversary of the commissioning of the USS Boston SSN 703. I am Dan Schiegel, and this evening I'm honored and humbled to be your master of ceremonies. First, following revered naval tradition, we will now pipe our senior officers aboard. Boatswain mate, man the sides. Lieutenant Colonel Barry Hill, United States Air Force, retired, escorted by his mother, Jane Hill. Commander Robert Lobecker, escorted by Rita Knox. Commander Theodore Smolin, escorted by Cindy Stancliffe. Commander Ted Seveny, escorted by Marie Sykes. Captain Louis Cavalieri, escorted by Pat Probst. Captain Peter A. Scott, escorted by Rose Scott. Captain David A. Olivier, escorted by Patricia Olivier. If you will please, if you're able to stand for the presentation of the colors. Color guard, parade the colors. Color guard, present the colors.
Order arms, present arms.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Order arms.
Color guard, post the colors.
Forward fix. Forward march. present arms. Order, arms. Fix.
Would you please remain standing for the invocation of grace offered by Captain Cavalier?
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all again. Some of you might remember me from last year in Philadelphia. And if you have, please don't tell the others who weren't there about my jokes. I'm very happy to, we do a lot of reunions from the Navy Yard in Philadelphia. And for some reason, that's a very popular place, which is what you had last year, so I got invited back up here this year for two good reasons. And I want to say that, that this is a very large group. Usually reunions are not this large. Most of the reunions that we do, if they have 50 to 100 people, that's a lot. So my hat's off to all of you from the USS Boston. So now, I'd like to all of us just concentrate a bit and just bow our heads and lift up our spirits in prayer. And lift up your spirits. Soar to the heights. Welcome back, shipmates. Soar to the heights of the highest mast on the USS Boston CHG-1. Or to the depths, the lowest of the depths of the ocean, on the submarine, SSN 703. Soar and love. Almighty God, when your providence has seen fit to muster again the crews of the USS Boston, surface sailors and submariners, in a legacy of fellowship and goodwill for veterans and their families. And we ask guidance to make crooked paths straight and guide us in all of our undertakings. Let our ways be paths of peace, living closer to one another together, and do what we can to uplift all people, particularly veterans, as you guys are so worthy to do. So shall our crews be a closer walk with you, O Lord. Calm and serene are the seas, a light to shine upon all of the courses that we take that leads to you, the land. And now we ask for a blessing on this food and all of us gathered here, and in your name we pray. Amen and bon appetit.
Please remain standing. At your table, there is a glass, and I would like to raise a toast to the anniversary of the commissioning of the SSN 703. May your boat be tight, your cork be loose, your rum be spiced, and your compass be true. Hear, 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 hear. Please be seated and make sure that your tickets are at your place setting and enjoy your meal. Our side boys tonight were all shipmates. They were Jim Gustafson, Brian Sloat, Donald Smith, Chief Gary Lyda, Tony Davison, Gus Levy, Ryan Kirk, and Jerry Levin. Give it a At the head table this evening, we have our President, Barry Probst, Barry's wife, Pat Probst, our reunion chairman, Mrs. Patricia Olivier, and our keynote speaker, Captain David A. Olivier, from the United States Navy. Big Patty Schiebel. Captain Louis A. Cavallari, United States Navy retired. Captain Cavallari received his commission from Officers Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island in December 1971. He reported aboard the USS Severn AO-61, where he served as Communications Officer and Operations Officer, deploying to the 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean in 1973. From July 1974 to early 1976, he served as an instructor in naval science at the Staff Corps Indoctrination School, receiving a commendation for his service during the visit of the Royal Yacht Britannica to Newport Naval Station as part of the 1976 U.S. Bicentennial celebration. Captain Cavallari is the chairman of the board of the chaplain of the 4 chaplains in the Navy Yard in Philadelphia. He holds a BA degree from the St. John's University and an MBA from Rutgers. He serves on the board of the Philadelphia Maritime Academy Charter School, the Millennium Development Goals Task Force of the Diocese of New Jersey for ending worldwide poverty, and he is currently involved with the Episcopal Church Center in New York for the care of trafficked women and children, and serves on the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking. Captain Cavallari has been married to Denise since 1975. They had 2 sons, and I had to bring up the number on this. They are now blessed with 4 grandchildren: Dominic, Isabel, Riley, and Addie. Captain Louis Cavallari.
Well, coming from New York City, I don't know what to say after that introduction. Yeah. But at least he left out the part that I'm from Brooklyn. And I know that there are many people in this audience who may be from New York City, and if you are, please come and say hello. I do know that there are many of you in the audience from Pennsylvania, because I met several people out in the hallway there, and Pennsylvanians just seem to gravitate toward one another. And I represent the Chapel of 4 Chaplains now in the Philadelphia Navy Yard. Now, this is a very unusual position for somebody who had a naval career, because the 4 chaplains, as much as it grieves me to say, were not Navy chaplains, they were Army chaplains. The US-18 Dorchester, the ship that they were on, was an Army ship, US-18 meaning US Army Transport. So I have a very, very close relationship with our friends in the service. And we get along very well, except that one Saturday in December, when we play football against each other. So the Chapel of 4 Chaplains is a memorial to all of those who perished on the Dorchester. And the Dorchester, I'm telling this story now, and you'll hear more about it later when I make a presentation to one of your shipmates. But the Dorchester was going on its way to Greenland during World War II because we wanted to build an air base out there. And the Dorchester was torpedoed and sunk about 100 miles off of Greenland. Now, why was this so unique? Well, first of all, it was the heaviest loss of life at sea up to that point in World War II. 672 people went down on the ship. The Dorchester was carrying, and this is very, very interesting when you hear this, it was a merchant marine crew, not a Navy crew, a merchant marine crew. But they did have a Navy Home Guard on board. They had Army Air Corps, they had regular Army, including the 4 chaplains, and they had a ton of civilians who were going to build this air base in Greenland. So it was a microcosm of society for the United States. And when it was torpedoed, it went down in 20 minutes. Now, just think about that for a few minutes yourself. You all served on a ship, big ship, cruiser, or on a submarine. 20 minutes is not a lot of time. And the first thing that you do, of course, is when you abandon ship, is you go to your lifeboat stations. But what do you do when the ship is listing very, very rapidly? 32 degrees outside, the decks are icy, and all the lifeboat riggings, there were 13 lifeboats on the ship, they were all frozen to their rigging. So they were only able to release 3 of the 13 lifeboats. So consequently, there was a very, very heavy loss of life. So at the chapel of 4 chaplains in the Navy Yard in Philadelphia, we have the testimony of all the survivors. And I know exactly what happened. When somebody comes to us today, usually we're seeing now the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren of those who served on board, they want to know what happened to their family member. So we look up their name, I see what their position was, and I know exactly what their exit was or what their demise was on the vessel. 4 chaplains are on board. Now, why is that unique? Well, every time I tell this story, people always think it's going to be a joke. 4 chaplains on a ship, 2 were Protestant, 1 was Catholic, and 1 was a Jewish rabbi. So what's the punchline? And the punchline is called sacrifice and selfless service. Because as the ship was going down in 20 minutes, you don't have a lot of time to mobilize your resources. And in the Navy and in the Army, they are trained to take chaos and stabilize it. Well, how do you stabilize a ship that's sinking in 20 minutes? First of all, you don't know that it's going to go down in 20 minutes. So the ship is going down, the 4 chaplains had the foresight to go to the stern of the ship, and there was a life jacket locker there. And they opened up that life jacket locker and they started passing out life jackets. And the other people on the ship heard about that. They were all running to the stern, getting a life jacket and jumping over the side. But then they ran out of life jackets, and the line was still stretched down the side of the ship. So what did these 4 chaplains do? They took off their own life jackets. They just took off their own life jackets simultaneously, gave it to the next person in line. And when they did that, they didn't say, here, you're Catholic, you take mine. You're Protestant, you take mine. You're Jewish, you take mine. They just gave it to the next person in line. And then they held hands in prayer and went down with the ship. And we know that this is true because survivors have written their testimony and told us this. And when the survivors have written their testimony, they first had to do it right after the sinking. It was a Navy investigation into the sinking. And what they wrote was this. I was in my berth, I went up on deck, got over the side, was picked up by one of the Coast Guard cutters that was screening the ship. Very, very point blank, A, B, C, D. 20 years later, we asked 230 survivors of those who were remaining to tell their story again. And you know it was entirely different. What they said was that I lost my best friend, and why did I survive and he did not? Every one of those 230 survivors had survivor's guilt. And you, being shipmates here, know what that feeling, what that bond is. And why did you survive and the others did not? So, one final story here. The night before the ship was sunk, it was a very tense atmosphere on the ship because they knew there were U-boats in the area. So the 4 chaplains decided to do this skit. And this is the true story, by the way. And they have a little thing up on the mess decks there where there's entertainment. You probably did this several times on your boat or on your ship, where you have an entertainment night, and the crew gets up there and makes complete idiots of themselves and sings and dances and things like that. Well, the 4 chaplains skit went like this. They did a skit which was entitled, "What do you do with your collection on a Sunday morning?" So one of the Protestant ministers gets up there and says, well, I take the collection in my hands, and I draw a circle, and I throw the money up in the air. And whatever lands inside the circle is mine, and whatever's outside the circle goes to the church. The Jewish rabbi says, well, what I do is, I throw the money up in the air, and whatever I catch in my hands is mine. And whatever falls on the ground goes to the congregation. So the Catholic priest gets up and he says, you guys have it all wrong. He says, what I do is, I throw the money up in the air, and when God wants, he takes. So you can see that in a very tense moment. They had the foresight to try to calm people down. And that's what chaplains do. They live their mission. And they're the chaplain of 4 chaplains today. We have 4 programs. A Legion of Honor program, which you'll hear about more tonight, which we give out for selfless service all over the world. We have a scholarship program where we encourage kids from all over this country to write essays, and we give out $5,000 in prizes. And we have an emergency chaplains corps. You know, during 9/11, when all those people were killed in New York, when a call went out for chaplains to go up there and minister to the fire and police department and all the workers there, Chapel 4 chaplains sent 45 chaplains from the Philadelphia area up to New York to minister to everybody up there. And finally, our 4th program is our largest program, and that is our outreach to veterans. I don't need to tell anybody in this audience today that veterans are hurting for lots of different reasons. And they come to us for lots of different reasons, and we try to resolve their issues, not only for them, but also for their families. So that's what we do. I am delighted to be here. I'm delighted to be associated with the group, the shipmates of the USS Boston. I can feel the energy in this room. Having been on several ships myself, and knowing what shipmates are, you guys have a special feel here, and I really applaud your efforts for it. And I'll be back up here in a few more minutes to get on with the program. So thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for sharing this program of the legacy of the 4 chaplains.
This reunion does not take place through the efforts of just 1 or 2 people. It takes a dedicated team to run this organization, its projects and events. And at times, we are fortunate to have shipmates step up to provide much needed extra help. In alphabetical order, I would like to introduce your team. And if you would please stand and remain standing as I introduce you if you're able. And I apologize in advance if I leave anybody out. Michael Brady, James and Judy Harlan, Dennis O'Verdier and Rita Knox, Jeffrey Moses, Robert Lorraine Paris, Charlie Perez, Charlie, Ann Hickey, Barry and Pat Probst, Fred and Randa Probst, Peter Rupert, Bill and Marie Seitz, Richard and Mary Sandone, Ted Semeny, Dan and Marietta Smith, Cindy Stancliffe, Bill and Linda Ubelacker, and Barry and Donna Wilson. If I missed anybody, please forgive me. These terrific committee members make this reunion possible. There is no way one person can do what it takes to be as successful as we are. Thank you. Each year we let everybody know about our reunion with selected VIP information going out, informing them of our impending reunion. This year we only have one response, and that was from the Secretary of the Navy, Carlos Del Toro. He sends this letter: greetings to the USS Boston Shipmates. On behalf of the Department of the Navy, I am honored to send my personal greetings and heartfelt appreciation to the crew members of the USS Boston, your families and friends, as you unite to celebrate the rich history of naval ship named Boston. Each of the 7 ships named Boston have proudly honored the city of Boston and her strong legacy of naval history. From the first USS Boston, who was commanded by Benedict Arnold, to the 7th, a nuclear-powered attack submarine, each USS Boston has served with distinction and manned by crews that not only fought for freedom, but also maintained her legacy. This year, you are all gathered not only to preserve the history the USS Boston, but also to honor the 40th anniversary of the commissioning of the USS Boston SSN 703. As you gather to recall your agency and to remember your shipmates, you can be justifiably proud of your service to a very grateful nation. Please accept my very best wishes for a memorable reunion. Sincerely, Carlos Del Toro. It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Captain David A. Olivier, who was born in Seattle, Washington, and attended the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. After graduating in May of 1980 with a Bachelor of Science degree in nuclear engineering, he was commissioned under the NROTC program. Captain Olivier completed nuclear power training at Orlando, Florida, and Boston Spa, New York, and submarine officer basic training in Groton, Connecticut. Captain Olivier served on the USS Memphis 921, home ported in Norfolk, Virginia, from September 1981 until July 1985 as reactor control assistant, damage control assistant, and combat systems officer, and conducted 2 overseas deployments. He then attended the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California, receiving master's degrees in meteorology and oceanography. After completion of submarine officer advanced course in Groton, Connecticut, he served as engineer officer on USS Alaska, SSBN 732, Gold, home ported in Bangor, Washington, from June of 1988 until November 1990, completing 4 strategic deterrent patrols. In November of 1990, he was assigned to the Bureau of Naval Personnel in Washington, D.C., where he served in the Submarine Officer Assignment Branch as the Submarine Department Head Detail. From April 1993 to September 1996, Captain Olivier served as the officer in charge of a unique nuclear-powered research submarine. During this tour, submarine NR-1 conducted 4 deployments, 2 of these overseas. Captain Olivier then relieved as commanding officer the USS Boston, SSN 703, in March of 1997 and completed 2 overseas deployments and an inactive activation availability serving until November of 1999. Captain Olivier served as Deputy Commander Submarine Squadron 2 in New London, Connecticut until December 2001, followed by a tour on the staff of the Chief of Naval Operations as Branch Head, Submarine Strike and Unmanned Vehicles from January 2002 until July 2003. He then assumed the duties as Commander, Navy Recruiting Region North, from August 2003 to July 2005, followed by assignment to the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, from August 2005 to June of 2006. After graduation and receipt of a master's in National Security and Strategic Studies, he transferred to the staff of the U.S. Strategic Command in Omaha, Nebraska, in July of 2006. He ran the Global Operations Center and Associated Nuclear Command and Control Operations until his retirement in August of 2008. After retirement, he continued his long-standing support of the Navy, working as a defense contractor at Wright Solution Incorporated in Pawcatuck, Connecticut, from August 2008 to July 2014. Supporting advanced submarine design concepts. He then returned to the U.S. Navy as a civil service employee working as a supervisor of shipbuilding in Groton, Connecticut from July 2014 until his second Navy retirement in April of 2021. While there, he supported government oversight of critical submarine construction and repair programs at Electric Boat in Connecticut and Quonset Point, Rhode Island, including the Moored Training Ship Program, the Commissioned Submarine Repair Program, and finally, the Columbia-class construction program. His personal awards included the Defense Superior Service Medal, Legion of Merit, 2 awards, Meritorious Service Medal, 3 awards, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, 4 awards, the Naval Civil Service Commendation Medal, and the Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals, 2 awards. He is married to the former Patricia Linen of Beverly, Mass., and they have 3 children, Paul, Mark, and Christine, and 4 grandchildren. Captain Olivier.
Apologize for a second, I had to put my old man glasses on. I'd like to thank the Shipmates for the invitation to speak here at the 2022 reunion and the 40th anniversary of the commissioning of my alma mater to a certain extent, the SSN 703 version of USS Boston. I have remarks that were prepared by Admiral Barr because he was the commissioning commanding officer. So I'm going to read those first, and then I'm going to get back to some thoughts of my own. USS Boston 2022 Reunion, July 2022. Remarks by Rear Admiral John M. Barr, USN retired. To act like an admiral here, it's also. Commissioning commanding officer, USS Boston, SSN 703. Boston Shipmates, families, and friends, my wife, Marcia, and I regret we are unable to be with you. I'm sure you all had a great time and will tell many sea stories that grow just a bit with each telling, which also recall cherished memories and the challenges that are part of bringing any Navy ship to life. Every shipmate, wife, and family member contributed to that. And let us not forget the reason for our ships being the defense of our nation, the finest, freest, and most revered nation that ever existed on this earth. God willing, we will remain so for many generations to come. I arrived at Submarine Boston in November 1979. There were about 40 or so of the commissioning crew there already, and we started the long and varied task of getting ready to take our ship to sea. As the shipyard built the ship, we organized and trained in every aspect of our ship and on every shipboard system. Qualified to take over systems as the shipyard finished them, and when we completed a myriad of inspections and testing that covered the entire ship, we were ready to take Boston to sea. From that time on, while the shipyard completed various tasks and repairs, only the commissioning crew operated the ship. We had watched Boston go from a framework to the finished product. Almost every day, many of us walked the ship to watch the progress and to learn, and learn we did. I was very proud of every member of our crew. We had persevered through trial and tribulation and succeeded. Since I enjoy sea stories, I'm going to tell a few myself and even a few land stories too. First, the ship launching. Boston was launched on April 1979. Launching is a big event and was the shipyard's responsibility. Many VIPs were invited, the crew looked sharp, and many public citizens were standing on pier next to the launch lanes. For years, a very large photo of the launching hung at the Groton Airport. The post-launch luncheon was held in a fancy tent. Marcia and I sat at the head table with the ship sponsor, Karen Hidalgo, the wife of the Secretary of the Navy, Edward Hidalgo. I sat next to the Electric Boat CEO, one P. Takis Veliotis. He was of Greek origin and spoke with an extraordinarily rich and almost unintelligible accent. I was straining to hold what I thought would be a simple conversation. However, shortly I repeatedly heard what sounded suspiciously like the F word in frequent juxtaposition with Rico. Admiral Rickover had Veliotis in his sights for various malign practices, probably illegal, and Veliotis was squirming. In fact, he later hastily returned to Greece, and as far as I know, never returned. The launch went off flawlessly, and the lunch was excellent. All in all, a good day, except for Mr. Veliotis. Next story is one that impacted everyone. Usually the shipyard electric boat turned out about 2 submarines a year. There have been several delays of the ships ahead of us. The cumulative impact, coupled with the need to get submarines to the fleet, meant that the Navy wanted electric boat to deliver 6 submarines, like Boston, plus the first Trident ballistic missile submarine in 1982. We were to be the last delivered. As we got closer to being next up, more and more shipyard workers were freed up to descend on Boston. That was fine for them. The electric boat had lots of workers, but we only had a fixed number of crew to support an increasing number of workers who were completing the systems our crew had to take over. It was grueling, but the commissioning crew, the plank builders, did it. Tired and weary, but successful. Then there was the day before the first sea trials. Admiral Rickover came aboard since he rode every nuclear ship's first trial. And as any sailor knows, there were always problems the day before an underway, and this was no exception. We had repeated troubles with the fire control computer. We could get it fixed and then it broke again. We could not go on sea trials without it working. The Admiral was told that he was not happy about the possibility of missing the first sea trial day. He called a meeting which included me, my squadron commander, the Navy supervisor of shipbuilding, and a very senior shipyard official. It was not Mr. Veliotis, since he and the Admiral were not on good terms. The meeting was strictly an Admiral talk and rest of us listen affair, with most of his hire directed at the yard. Did he help? You bet. He'd been told that we lacked needed repair parts, and he gave specific directions, and before underway time we had enough repair parts to last a very long time. First sea trials were highly successful, testing overall ship performance with emphasis on the propulsion plan. When we returned to port, Admiral Rickover made comments on the 1MC, praising the crew and ship. Then he told. More sea trials followed to put the rest of the ship through her paces. Last came the board of inspection survey to do the evaluation, which determined whether Boston was ready to be delivered to the Navy. We were. So with 1 week left in 1982, we left the shipyard, steamed ashore way up the Thames River, tied up in submarine base. 7th submarine of 1982 had been delivered, and no group was more important to me than our superb crew of plank runners. About a month later, the Boston was commissioned and took her place in the United States Navy. And we conducted several months of shakedown exercises prior to arriving at Newport News shipyard for a maintenance period to correct the inevitable problems that arose during shakedown. The highlight of the shakedown period was pulling into Port Canaveral and taking aboard Mr. Edwin Meese, a senior advisor to President Ronald Reagan, and Vice Admiral Steve White, Commander Submarine Force Atlantic, for a day trip. We put the ship through her paces, and Mr. Meese told lots of interesting Washington stories. We gave them a Boston coffee cup for the President, and sure enough, a few days later, we got a nice photo of the President holding his new cup. Shortly after arrival on Newport News, I left the ship. It had been almost 3 years, and it was an honor for me to be associated with such a great crew on the important mission of seeing our U.S. submarine join the fleet. I wish you all the best, and thank you for letting me talk to you and reminisce for a while. So thank you, Admiral Walker. Boston Shipmates, what a great organization. I saw all those people standing up, the ones largely responsible, in addition to others that obviously helped. I just can't be amazed. This is my 4th reunion, and every time I come, it gets me. Professional and superbly set up the whole reunion is, and I'm just very appreciative that all of the Bostons can be remembered through this great organization. I can understand why so many return year after year, and I've only got 4 on my badge, I feel like a newbie. And and now we're starting to get a lot of first-timers, and more importantly, I think, get a lot of people that were on the SSN 703 to start making that inevitable transition. Now, why do we do this? Why do we all gather like this? I was watching the auction last night, watching a lot of people spend a lot of money on largely Boston memorabilia. And it occurred to me that the reason we're here is we mature, and I think we're all getting mature eventually. We realize the importance of the Boston and our service on the Boston, both to ourselves, our families, and a lot of family members are here, it's impressive, and also to our country. And though we may have only served just a short time on Boston, it's something that we and our loved ones are really never going to forget. And I think this organization is special for its ability to carry that forward and evolve the younger generations. Now, USS Boston, as was mentioned in other remarks, through all its 7 iterations, was a warship. You read the history, if you go Google USS Boston, those Bostons did a lot of stuff and were involved in a lot of conflict. Sometimes it wasn't always pretty. I was watching a History Channel special, and I'd forgotten that USS Boston landed troops into Hawaii that actually facilitated the turnover of the Hawaiian monarchy to the United States. So not exactly a great moment in Boston history, perhaps, but Boston troops were there. If you haven't gone through and read the history of all the 7 iterations, or at least the 6 before the submarine who actually shot bullets and did things, it's exceptionally impressive. I will say, however, I'll comment on it, that the submarine certainly did her share what I would call kind of a different way. We all lived through and experienced the Cold War. I think you can generally frame that from the end of World War II to the 1991 demise of the Soviet Union. And certainly the Cold War played a huge role in the Boston's history, both CAG 1, and I guess, strange if you read through CAG 1 and back to CA-69, and 703. And although the 703 never exercised her weapon systems directly in conflict, she was part of all the cloak and dagger, behind-the-scenes submarine warfare that went through the end of the Cold War. I know Barry asked me if I had any insight into how we could get the deck logs for the submarine Boston, because obviously all the deck logs from previous iterations were readily available to the Historical Society, but I have no idea when they're going to release them because they're classified. And what's interesting, having been there, a lot of it's not very interesting stuff in those deck logs. And then there's a whole other set of logs kept that are higher classifications because they just have to do that. Boston certainly played her role, and I think everybody knows certainly have read books or watched movies about some of the things that submarines do, and I can't comment on the specifics other than to say Boston was right there in those places and playing with adversaries in ways that kept them knowledgeable that we knew how to track them and defeat them, and if it ever came to that. And so Boston was right there, providing that service. Again, submarine force, I think, largely contributing in that manner, similar to the way the submarine force played a huge and pivotal role in World War II. The demise of the Soviet Union, I believe, believe was largely influenced by the Reagan buildup of the 80s, that SSN 703 was clearly smack dab in the middle, delivering in 82 timeframe. And that shaped, unfortunately, to a certain extent, I think, the effectiveness of the platform itself and its other Los Angeles class submarines, and all those things that we were doing applied so much pressure to the Soviet Union and made them unable to meet the commitments to fund a similar military buildup and allocation of forces, and ultimately that stretched the Soviet Union and brought pretty much to the demise of the Soviet Union. Now, that happened, as I said, in December of '91, and to a certain extent, having lived through that transition when the Soviet Union broke apart, it kind of left us submariners without a job to a certain extent. We knew more about Soviet ships, airplanes, and missiles, and tactics and communications than we did about really our own service. I often went to see, we had exercises with U.S. Naval forces. It was oftentimes, everybody around a desk looking through picture books trying to figure out what the name or class of that ship was that we were seeing through the periscope. It wasn't very easy. If you put a Russian ship out there, we would have found that out. We would have known that in a hurry. It took a little while for the effects of the demise of the Soviet Union to kind of ripple through the Defense Department. I happened to be in Washington, D.C. After the demise and working at the Bureau of Naval Personnel, and that's where they were figuring out how we were going to save all this money, because now we no longer needed all these ships and submarines and weapons and systems because our primary adversary was gone. And so a lot of times people ask me, what happened to the Boston? How long is a submarine supposed to last? For those of you who don't know, they're typically designed for a 33-year lifetime. And USS Boston was decommissioned in 17 years. This is halfway through its life. It's still a young submarine. So the reality is, just to save, I think the bill was about $180 million, I think was the cost to refuel Boston, and they needed to save $180 million. And so her, along with a host of other Los Angeles-class submarines, basically left the fleet early. It's strange, but as we all realize, peace doesn't last very long. Now we're trying to build as many Virginia-class submarines as we can. And it's like the geniuses in the Pentagon didn't know simple math. If you get rid of this many submarines, you're going to end up with a big reduction in your number of submarines. So now they're trying to build them, and they're trying to figure out how to actually refuel some of the last 688s that were never designed to be refueled. Imagine that. You got Boston, who was ready to be refueled, perfectly designed for it, and now you're trying to refuel submarines that were never intended to be refueled. For those of you who don't know, that's like if you wanted to replace the battery on your smartphone and it was not designed to have the battery in place. It's pretty tricky. Nuclear reactor is a little bit tricky. Before I talk about the final inactivation, I want to I got to get at least one, maybe two sea stories here. How many of the shipmates that are here participated in the Tiger Cruise, the last Tiger Cruise of the USS Boston? Okay, we got I'll admit that was probably the scariest underway that I ever had in command. And I think I was very capable and didn't communicate that to the crew and to the passengers that were on board. We got underway from Port Canaveral with a bunch of the shipmates and a bunch of young children on board from relatives of crew members, including both my sons got to ride. And as happens oftentimes off the coast of Florida, you can be in great weather at one moment and then in absolute terrible weather the next. Big storm blew up off the coast of Port Canaveral. We're heading out to sea with all these people who aren't necessarily used to going to sea. And it was as bad as I've ever experienced. For those of you who have never been on a submarine at sea in rough weather on the surface, that's not where it's designed to be. And it's not comfortable, it rolls around, and all I remember is my youngest son laying on my stateroom floor saying, "Dad, please make this stop." I couldn't make it stop. And then we had a little bit of a complication. Because obviously on a submarine, you're trying to get out there and get submerged. Then it's nice. Then you get to sit down, relax, and eat ice cream, and enjoy yourself. But back in the engine room, we had some, I'll just say stuff, that you normally put into the reactor to keep the reactor plant happy. And that stuff is not supposed to be anywhere else other than in the reactor plant. And it was rough weather, and a bottle of this stuff ended up breaking and dropping into the bilge. And so all my people in the engine room were in emergency breathing apparatus while we were emergency ventilating the engine room and trying to get out to the dive point, but we couldn't submerge because we couldn't reach what they call shift the modes of how you operate the air on a submarine to what they call recirculate, which is basically move the air just internally, don't exchange it with the outside world. But you couldn't do that if you had this stuff in the air. I'm visualizing, and I always took my meclizine or Dramamine. I always did that before I ever got underway. It was my mom. I never ever got sick, but my motto was always take it. And it was really rough. A lot of people were hurting, and I was just visualizing that there's the end of my career. Because I'm going to have to. What am I going to do? Turn around? I got to turn around and go back in the port, or do I expose all these? Do I try to put all these kids in emergency breathing apparatus? Or it was ugly. Fortunately, we managed to get the air exchanged just as it's kind of a complicated process, but submarines are assigned what they call water space to allow them to submerge and prevent them from running into other submarines. So you can't just go out there and go underwater. You gotta go underwater in this particular chunk of water, and then that chunk of water just moves. So if you don't get into your chunk of water on time, you're a surface ship. So we managed by like 20 minutes to get everything buttoned up, and get submerged, and start feeding people ice cream. So that was my bad day in maintenance. Everybody knows we had the final inactivation in Pearl Harbor. We did a Unitas cruise, which was the circumnavigation of South America. It's the first time it was done by a 688. It's the last time it was done by really any submarine. They stopped that. They used to take a whole task force and go around South America, and they stopped doing that. Now they do exercise on the submarine. All I can say is, if you don't have to go around the horn, don't do it. Okay? We happen to have, I'll just say this is another interesting tidbit. We broke our #2 periscope somewhere off of Argentina. And for those of you who don't know, you've got a good periscope, and then a periscope that they pretty much took off World War II submarines. And that was not a very good periscope. And so there we are off Argentina with no real periscope. So we were operating with all these South American nations on Unitas. And the challenge became, how do you replace your periscope? Because it really is a big safety issue if you can't see through your periscope. You can run into things. Now, people ask me all the time, how does somebody keep from running into things? Well, they don't do a very good job of it sometimes, but the periscope is kind of a critical method. So they wanted to pull us into the Falkland Islands because there aren't a lot of places that you can pull a U.S. nuclear submarine. But then, as you can imagine, the Argentinians who were playing with, in an exercise just that day before we were supposed to go to the Falklands, then it turned into a major State Department hoo-ha because the Argentinians, as you know, I mean, obviously the Argentinians in the UK and Falkland Islands don't get along too well, and it had not been that long since the Battle of the Falkland Islands. And so USS Boston did not get to go to the Falkland Islands, so we got to go around the horn with basically no periscope. And it's good. I mean, if you're going to operate anywhere, that's probably a good place to operate without a periscope, because there's nothing there. Other than, we did hear some icebergs, we did hear them melting, they make a fizzing sound. It's kind of unnerving if you're going south around the horn, and you're in sonar, and you hear icebergs to your right. And that's not a good mental image. That means you're between the icebergs and Antarctica. So we managed to ride our way through the horn, and I will say we didn't really go to periscope depth as much as we unintentionally surfaced the ship and just buckled down while we experienced incredible waves that knocked us around. It was very, very horrible. Eventually, when we got around to Chile and replaced our scope and did an amazing thing of replacing a periscope at anchor, brought a barge out, a crane on a barge, and replaced the periscope. I got a hand to the people that came down to do that, and eventually made it home. I'd never been through the Panama Canal in my career, and on Boston, my final year and a half really of operations, we went through 4 times. First 2 times we went through under control of the U.S. Panama Canal Authority before the transfer. The next 2 we went through with now just Panama. Big difference. We almost intersected our bow with one of the locks in the Panama Canal because they just didn't see it as a serious operation as much as I did. Again, worrying about my career. We finally eventually made it to Pearl in January '99, and then went into the Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard for inactivation. And despite the moniker, for those of you who know Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, it's not noted for its speed or efficiency. They called it no ahoy, which means no can do in English. But surprisingly, there was a lot of pressure, and we were inactivated. We, I guess, set the record, at least at that time, for how long from arrival to inactivation, which is a good thing for the crew. But the last image that I have of Boston, because they take the core out, the reactor core, take all the insides out. It's incredible. And then all the outside, any opening to the hull, they weld up with steel plates to make sure that it won't leak when it's towed in gloriously like a barge up to Puget Sound for the final disposal. So we were standing on the pier on the 19th of November, 1999. I mustered the crew. The crew was about 12 people left. Beautiful day, of course it was Hawaii. We're just standing there, and then the Commodore comes over, reads a message, and that inactivated the Boston. And we hauled down the flag, and took our sea bags and went to the airport and flew home. Final disposal, if you're interested, there are at least some parts of the Boston still, I'm not going to say touchable. The reactor department is in a big pit in Hanford in Washington State. They get towed up and put in. You can actually Google and see on a Google picture where the Boston reactor department is, and this whole assembly of all these old submarine reactors. And also, for those of you who haven't been there, I know lots of you have, lots of you participated in the salvage and reclamation of the USS Boston sail and rudder, which is up at in Buffalo at the Erie Naval Museum. So if you haven't seen that, if you're ever in that area, please take a look at it and go touch it like that. I get asked often, will there be another Boston anytime soon? I don't know. Probably. But right now, the way the hulls are being named, it doesn't look likely that it may be a submarine, but we don't know. What I can say is, looking out at all of you here this evening, the USS Boston is a shipmate organization. I think it's going to persist for a long and successful time into the future. So again, thank you for allowing me to speak, and have a good evening.
We have the early birds. Those are the people, and this year there are 89 of them that sign up prior to May 1st. This helps us get an idea of the number of people we can expect, so we can bargain with the hotels and the tour groups, the bus groups, and the vendors. We're going to pick one winner out of the 89 names that are in here, and you will receive one night's free stay here at the hotel. And if I may ask Patricia to draw one out the vote. Neil W. Bennett. You'll be getting an envelope for a free-night stay here. Thank you. Thank you for signing up. And that gives everybody else an idea of next year. Let's get signed up early, okay? It's your hotel room's taken off. Yes, but thanks for the thought. The 50-25-25 drawing is a simple and effective way to raise working capital for the USS Boston Memorial. 2 winners each will go home with a quarter of the monies collected through the ticket sales. And the USS Boston Memorial projects receive monies for maintenance and improvements. I would like to ask my bride, Patty, to assist me in this drawing. Tonight's amounts are worth $300 each. You know what I'm going to say? It's a red ticket. It is a white ticket. 395-4843. 395-4843. And the other number is 395-5633. 395-5633. Three nine five 5633. Robert Bouchard was the winner of the first $300. Do I have a winner on the other one? 395-5633. Thank you, Robert. I will get that out to you. Okay, let's go pick one more up. Three 395-4839. Three 395-4839. Three 395-4839. Okay. 395-5555. Somebody's got to have that. 39 and the rest are fives. That's James Marcel. And Jim is donating half of his back. We also have a t-shirt quilt raffle, a quilt made by our own Jane Hill, going to perform. So again, I'd like to have Patty to assist me in that draw.
Come on, Patty.
And the blue ticket, and I'm serious, blue ticket, 839-5287. 839.
Somebody has the ticket.
Okay, do I have a winner? 839-5287. Come on up. Bring your ticket.
Good.
I'm good.
Oh my God. No, oh, I can't walk up to the.
You can do whatever you want.
I come there.
The USS Boston Shipmates Reunion is considered to be a highly successful organization by many outsiders. There are a lot of reasons for that, some of which have to do with over 243 years of Boston history, and some of which have to do with individual personalities and efforts. We are a diverse community, diverse in that we are part World War II crew, Cold War and peacetime crews, Vietnam conflict crews, Middle East conflict era, cruiser sailors and sub-sailors, all with a common bond. We are always working on a future reunion and beyond. Working on our committee is very rewarding, knowing that we are preserving the history of over 2 centuries of Boston patriotic service and contributing to what hotels say is one of the most successful, smooth-running, proactive reunions they've ever seen. We have members contributing from their homes in New York, Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Florida. And if you would like to contribute to these efforts, please by all means see Barry Probst or any of the committee members after the banquet. The very first person who signed up this year is our own Bill Uvelacker. He sent his resignation in within minutes of receiving the email. Thank you. Thank you for being so prompt. There are 205 people here this weekend from 30 states, including 113 shipmates, 32 of whom are from the 703. But the greatest of all is our World War II shipmate, Ivan Bassett. Served from 43 to 46, and we owe him a great gratitude from all of us for that greatest generation. Thank you, Ivan. We have 32 shipmates here from the 703. We cannot express enough how pleased we all are to have so many here from the 703. And this is the natural progression. At the 1987 reunion, there were nearly equal number of WW2 and guided missile cruiser sailors, and only one sub-sailor. As the subgroup crew ages, more of you are attending the reunion. Many of you are approaching the age we were at 1987. which was our first reunion. The 7th Boston continued a tradition dating back to 1776 and was the first submarine to bear this name. Boston was launched by our Builder Electric Boat Division in Groton, Connecticut on April 1980. The 44-day period from the boat's first sea trials on 8 November 1981 to the 22nd December 1981 delivery of the ship to the Navy was the fastest ever for a nuclear submarine built in electric boat shipyards. USS Boston SSN 703 is a Los Angeles class fast attack submarine. The Boston is a high-speed, very quiet boat designed to search out and destroy enemy surface ships and submarines, as well as strike targets ashore with Tomahawk cruise missiles. All the boat's weapons can be launched while the boat is submerged. The boat's high-speed capability is the result of an advanced design pressurized water nuclear reactor. The Boston served the United States with conspicuous gallantry, unflagging patriotism and citizenship, and outstanding performance that have been the hallmark of all Bostons since 1776. We are very proud of the officers and crews who served aboard the SSN 703. Would you all please stand? There are 17 shipmates here for their first reunion. Would you please stand? We hope to see each and every one of you again next year. 20 shipmates are here tonight, have been to 15 to 19 Boston reunions. Would you please stand? And continue standing. Two of us have been to 30 to 35 reunions. Would you please stand? There's only been one couple that's been to all 36 reunions, and they are Bill and Marie Stiles. We are blessed with 8 widows here tonight, continuing to represent their husbands by their attendance. As I call your name, would you please stand? Dottie Clough, wife of Wayne Clough, 1966 to 1970. Betty Hanson, wife of Joseph Hanson, 1958 to 1962. Lydia Heifel, wife of Harold Heifel, 1958 to 1959. Jane Hill, wife of Larry Hill, 1957 to 1959. Brenda Jones, wife of Malcolm Jones, 1966 to 1969. Barbara Kane, wife of Roger Kane, 1967 to 1968. Jean Morris, wife of Gary Morris, 1979 to 1981. And Cindy Stancliffe, wife of Paul Stancliffe, 1966 to 1967. The division with the highest attendance this year is Spots Division with 12 attending. Massachusetts and Connecticut are 2 of the states with the highest representation. The shipmate traveling the furthest is Evan Jones, 1966 to 1967, from Brownsville, Texas, 2,149 miles. The shipmate who traveled the shortest distance is Robert Lobecker, 1965 to 1967, 23.6 miles. We have 2,971 shipmates on our membership roster. This is the lowest in 20 years. We are aging. Of these, 350 served aboard the CA-69 between 42 and 47. 1,987 served on board the CAG-1 and CA-69 between 55 and 1970. And 923 served aboard the SSN-703. We have members in all 50 states, 2 Canadian provinces, Puerto Rico, France, Thailand, England, and Tasmania. There are 446 life members. There were members being added on the way to the reunion this year. We collected well over $43,000 for meals at this reunion, and we booked 432 hotel nights at this reunion. And the full financial report is always made at the annual meeting in September. Would Jane Hill please come forward? Being a U.S. Navy submarine commander is a difficult and challenging job with an overwhelming responsibility. For this reason, we feel that both Captain Peter A. Scott, former commanding officer 1991 to 93, and Captain David Olivier, last commanding officer 1997 to 1999 of the SSN-703, are more than deserving of this honor. Would you please join Jane Hill in front of the podium here? I have 2 more volunteers to help with hold that blanket. Would you please come forward? Thank you.
Thank you so much. The Quilts of Valor Foundation is a group of thousands of quilters all across America. It was founded in 2003 by Catherine Roberts, who is a Blue Star mom. Our mission is to honor our service members and veterans who have been touched by war with comforting and healing quilts of valor. To date, we have given over 300,000 quilts of valor all over the United States. It is my honor and privilege to award you all with your own quilt of valor. On behalf of the Quilts of Valor Foundation, a quilt of valor is made of 3 layers, and each layer has its own special meaning. The top, with its many colors, shapes, and fabrics, represent the communities and the many individuals we are. The batting, which is the filler, is the center of the quilt, its warmth. It represents our hope that this quilt will bring warmth, comfort, peace, and healing to you. The backing is the strength that supports the other layers. It represents the strength of you. the support of your family, our communities, and our nation. Each stitch that holds the layers together represents love, gratitude, and sometimes the tears of the maker. Each quilt brings a three-part message from our heart. First, we honor you for your service. We honor you for leaving all that you hold dear to stand in harm's way in a time of crisis, protecting us from the effects of war. Next, our quilters know that freedom is really not free. The cost of our freedom is the dedication of lives of men like you, and this quilt is meant to say thank you for your service. And finally, this quilt is meant to offer comfort to you and to remind you that although your family and friends cannot be with you at all times, you are forever in our thoughts and prayers. For those of us who have never experienced combat or been in a war zone, such experiences are beyond our capacity to comprehend. But we believe that these quilts of valor have the ability to offer you both warmth and comfort. We hope when you experience dark times or need the warmth of a grateful hug beside your spouse, that you will wrap your quilt around yourself so it can provide the comfort we have sewn into every seam. So on behalf of the Quilts of Valor Foundation and a grateful nation, with our deepest appreciation, we thank you for your service to our country with this Quilt of Valor Award. With your quilts, you will also get a certificate. Each one of them says, the Quilts of Valor Foundation wishes to recognize you for your service to our nation. We consider it a privilege to honor you, though we may never know the extent of your sacrifice and service to protect and defend the United States of America. As an expression of gratitude, we award you this Quilt of Valor.
And now I'd like to have Captain Cavalieri, please come to the podium.
I have to say, Mrs. Hill, that was very, very impressive. Thank you very much for doing those quilts. And I think she deserves another round of applause. I also wanted, before I begin my remarks again, I want to thank Captain Olivier for giving that talk about his submarine service, particularly on the SSN in Boston. And now I'm convinced that submariners are the only people who can talk about deployments and not tell you anything. I want to say another thing about submarines, and that is that having served on several destroyers looking for submarines, the hardest thing to find in the big ocean is a submarine. They have better luck at finding us than we have them. I guess that's why they constantly refer to us as targets. So, continuing with what I said earlier about the four chaplains and the legacy of the four chaplains, we celebrate selfless service. And there is so much selfless service going on in this room that I am really impressed with. But in particular, there was one member of this organization whom we're going to induct into the Legion of Honor of the Chapel of Four Chaplains tonight for his selfless service. There is among you a shipmate who served on USS Boston from 1957 to 1959. And he considers that to have been his greatest honor. And he still holds that as his greatest achievement to serve his country. So, serving your country does not qualify you for the Legion of Honor report. It's what you get after. It's what happens when you contribute and give back. And Mike Brady, after leaving the military, volunteered for so many things. He was a fire chief in Port Clinton, Pennsylvania, not paid. He was in the volunteer ambulance corps for Leesburg, Pennsylvania, not paid. And he got a pilot's license, single-engine Cessnas. And he volunteered time to fly inner-city youth, hospice patients, and disabled veterans. You see, this gentleman is giving back. But the thing that impressed me most about his resume was the fact that Mike Brady, your shipmate, has restored over 4,000 tombstones of veterans in 50 cemeteries, primarily in the Pennsylvania area. Just think about that. 4,000 veterans' graves that he personally helped to restore. And we all know that there's a great effort with Wreaths Across America today to decorate every veteran's grave. And people like Mike Brady have made that very, very easy for us to do that. Now, I always say that I like to quote Winston Churchill. Everybody likes to quote Winston Churchill. You're not going to remember this quote after I say it. I will tell you another story that you will remember. But Winston Churchill said, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. We make a life by what we give." Mike Brady has made a wonderful life by giving of himself. So before I call him up here, I'll tell you the other story about Winston Churchill that you're always going to remember. Winston Churchill was obviously the Prime Minister, and the first lady elected to Parliament was Lady Astor, who was also had American blood. And Lady Astor and Winston did not get along politically. They were constantly arguing and bickering. And Winston would always come out with those sharp one-liners that would get her totally infuriated. So one time, Lady Astor was so upset that she said, "Sir Winston, if I were married to you, I would put poison in your tea." To which Sir Winston replied, "Lady Astor, if I were married to you, I would drink it." So now you'll always remember the Winston story, the Winston Churchill story. We make a life by what we give. Mike Brady, you have done tremendous work for helping so many people, particularly veterans. We appreciate that. And now I'd like to call you up to in front of the podium here, escorted by your daughter Beth, and we will make a presentation. I came fully equipped for Philadelphia. Mike, you know the legacy of the four chaplains, which revolves around selfless service. And we are now going to induct you into that legacy, the Legion of Honor of the Chapel of Four Chaplains, and you'll be forever enshrined with a memorial in Philadelphia at the Navy Yard. So now, please remain standing. That's very good that you stood up because this is the equivalent of a military order and a military decoration. The Chapel of Four Chaplains is pleased to present the Legion of Honor Humanitarian Award to Michael J. Brady on July 16, 2022. In recognition of your lifetime service to all people, regardless of race or faith. This award symbolizes for all Americans and for all time the unity of this nation founded upon the fatherhood of one God. Congratulations and welcome into the Legion of Honor. And one final thing, we have our challenge coin, which represents the medal that was given to the four chaplains. They were not given the Medal of Honor. They were given a special medal struck by Congress in 1960 and signed by President Eisenhower into law, a special medal for heroism and self-service. And that is commemorated on this challenge coin. This challenge coin is usually given for good behavior, and I hope that I'm not making an exception given this to you. We are honored to be able to induct one of your shipmates, and I hope this is the first of many more, because there's a lot of self-service going on in this organization. I can see it, and I'm very, very impressed, and we are here to recognize that. So thank you very much, Michael.
We have many shipmates to thank for helping make the reunion the success that we enjoy. The ones who share their mementos and keepsakes. So that we can place them on display at our reunions. The shipmates who donate raffle items aiding in our organization finances. Those who send stamps and donations for postage. Members of the submarine community who donate the flowers for the widows each year. And members of the CHE1 community that provide the wreath for the memorial service every year. To all of you here tonight, thank you for making this another successful reunion. Thank you for your service and your sacrifice. You mean so much to Patty and I, and it is this reunion that we look forward to every year. As I always say, there are wooden ships, ironclad ships, and steel ships. But the best ship is a friendship, and Patty and I thank you for those friendships. You make this organization and evening special. We hope you enjoyed yourselves this weekend. Without you, all of you here, this would not be a good reunion. We look forward to seeing all of you again in 1 year from now, July 13th, in New Orleans. Hotels we were staying in, and the new World War II D-Day Museum, right straight across the street from the hotel. So now loosen your ties, stay for a while, move around the room, renew some old acquaintances, make a new friend, and thank them for coming to your reunion. Stay and dance to Frankie and the thermostats as they provide the music for all the rest of us before we retire. Thank you so much.